welcome everybody. My name is Derrick Christopher Campos. Welcome to The Better Way. Today we are going to have a wonderful webinar where we talk about your message. And when you say everything, but nothing changes. And we've all been there before. I want you to think of your last presentation. Oh, it felt good, didn't it? You finished, you transferred all your information, you went through all of your slides, and it feels good. But then afterwards, silence. No change, no follow-up. And again, nothing happens. If the end goal of all communication is action, well, what does that mean if nobody acts? So we've all been there before, and I want you to think about presentations that you've been in, why they don't stick. And that's what we're going to talk about today, how to make your message memorable so that in the end, it's acted on. Now, I've told you before that great presentations, they don't die in a loud bang. They die in silence because nobody's going to come up to you afterwards and say, "Hey, Derrick, great presentation. You know, I didn't really pay attention because you didn't get my attention. And I don't know what you said because I wasn't taking notes. And since I don't know what you said, I'm not going to do anything. But hey, great presentation." That's not usually what happens. At best, somebody will come up to you and they will say, "Thank you," smile, and then they'll walk out of your life forever. So typically when we give presentation, we assume they got it. We assume that they understood it, and we assume that they'll act on it. And we all know what happens to assumptions. And that is why I want, if you take something away from today, write this down. Hope is not a communication strategy. We don't want to assume they got it. We don't want to assume they understood it. We want them to act. So hope is not a communication strategy. And that's where EMU comes in. We as communicators, we as presenters and teachers, we have to be self-aware enough to structure our message so that it does matter, so that it does stick. And when you use the EMU Communication Model, EMU stands for engaging, meaningful, and useful. And today we're going to focus on the third pillar, useful. Or as I like to call it, bread, milk, and butter. Now why bread, milk, and butter, you ask? Well, I just want to share this with you. Years ago, I was a little boy growing up in West Virginia. And of course, we would watch television. And there was something that I saw years ago that to this day has stuck with me. And I want to share it with you. It's about 65 minutes, or not minutes, 65 seconds long. And let me know in the comments if you recognize this or if you remember it. Here it is.
Now don't forget a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. If you can't remember, I'll write it down for you.
That's okay, Mommy. I won't forget. I remember. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. Mister, could I have a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and gee, I can't remember. Can you remember what my mommy said?
A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter.
A stick of butter. I remembered. Mommy, I remember. A loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter.
You have a good memory, honey.
Thank you, Mommy.
To this day, some 40 odd years later, I can't enter a grocery store without repeating a loaf of bread, a container of milk, and a stick of butter. It drives my wife crazy. But as soon as we enter, this thought hits my mind. And I want you to realize or think about, why is that? Why is it that you remember that? I don't need notes, I don't need slides, but it's stuck. And here is the reason. Because it's simple, it's repetitive, and it's structured. And I want to break that down to you in a little segment I like to call Derrick's Blackboard. Let's go there. Now, communication is simple, right? You have the sender and you have the receiver. Now you, as the sender, you have something on your mind. You have a message that you are desperate want to share. And there it is. It's fascinating. It can change the world, this message. And all you have to do is communicate it to the audience. So we do transfer that. You give all your slides, you give all your information, and now the audience has it. You've communicated. But there's a third step. Sender, receiver, and the most crucial step is this. The change. This is the Holy Grail. This is mission accomplished. This is the goal of communication, to act. And if there's something I want you to remember again from this webinar, it's this. So be sure and take notes. The goal of communication is action. Simple enough. And if it were that simple, everybody would be doing it, right? But I want you to think back at one of your presentations or one that you've heard. The message was good. You received it well, but afterwards, just kind of left. So what typically happens is communicators, and this is where they get it wrong, when you're teaching or speaking your message, it is very difficult to cross this chasm from information received to action. What happens generally is this, and this is where most communicators get it wrong. After they receive, the audience receives it, kind of goes by the wayside. This is where great messages go to die. Because if they can't remember your message, they can't act on it. And if they don't act on it, did you even say it? So, Derrick, you're asking, how can we make our message stick like milk, bread, and butter? Well, I'm glad you asked. So there is an acronym, 3 things that I use to make sure that when I structure my message, I design it so that it is milk, bread, and butter. And as I go through these, I want you to think of some of the techniques or things that you already use to make your message stick. What I'm going to list here are just a few, but there's so many out there. So if you have any that you use that are outside of this, comment in the chat and we will discuss that. But the ones that I use are 1, act, 2, retain, and 3, repeat. Act, retain, and repeat. I was in the Navy, so I like to call this acronym ARR, kind of like a pirate. Well, anyway, we'll continue on. So let's talk about the first one, act. If the goal of communication is to act, you have to let them know what the next steps are. If you're vague, and most messages, they do end like that, well, let me know if you have any questions. There's no questions. Nobody's going to come up to you. Remember, great presentations die in silence. You have to tell them what that next step is. And I'm not talking about a laundry list. I'm talking about the very next step. At the end of this presentation, I want you to focus on XYZ. Within the next 5 minutes, I want you to write down. So remember, you want to give them a time frame. By next Tuesday, I want all of this, whatever it is that you want them. Several examples, but this is the takeaway. Useful communication answers one question: what now? So don't pollute with so many steps of what to do next. What is the very next step? The single step that they need to take to act after your. Remember, simple, repetitive, and structured. Bread, milk, butter. Let's take a look at the next one, which is retain. Now remember, if they don't remember your message, they can't act on it. And if they don't act, did you even say it? There are several techniques to help people remember and retain your message. The rule of 3, bread, milk, butter, right? Red, white, and blue. Engage, meaningful, useful. Act, retain, repeat. 3 is a magic number. And when you design your message with these little retention modifiers, it matters. So the second takeaway is this: your message shouldn't need your slides to survive. And when you use the rule of 3 or repetition, similar to that little Sesame Street commercial or Sesame Street bit, you don't need slides. You don't need notes. It is in your mind because it has been repeated so long. So when you design your message to be remembered, they'll do it. So if you have any other ways that you use to have people remember your message, put it in the comments. Repetition, rule of 3, anchor phrases like meatloaf moment, bread, milk, butter, break the broca. So any of those anchor phrases also help your mind grab onto that message and keep it. And for the final one, repeat. The true acknowledgement of successful knowledge transfer is the ability to teach somebody else. If they can walk away from your presentation and go to somebody else and teach it, you've won. That is repeatability. Now, usually when we hear something exciting, I guess on Instagram or Reels, you see something that's funny or something that's helpful, the first thing you want to do is you want to share it with friends, family, with coworkers. You want to share that message because it means something to you and it's beneficial. The same thing when you design your message. You want it to be repeatable. Now, there was an old 80s shampoo commercial, I think it was Fabergé, I don't know. But in it, the lady was like, you'll like it so much, you'll tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends, and they'll tell 2 friends. So in the end, that message gets repeated and repeated exponentially until the whole world knows. And so the thing about repeat is this. The goal is not for them to remember you. The goal is for them to reuse what you gave them. So that information, you want them to tell 2 friends, and then for them to tell 2 friends. But it has to be designed in a way that they don't need slides, that they can do it from memory. And that is making your message useful. So, bread, milk, and butter. Simple design, simple ways, very structured. So let's briefly go over just a little bit about what we've gone over today. Again, in the spirit of repetition and making it stay, let's do a little quick review. So there are 3 takeaways that I want you to walk away with from this webinar. Number 1, hope is not a communication strategy. When we assume they got it, when we assume they understood, when we assume they're going to act on it, well, we all know what happens to assumptions. Hope is not a communication strategy. Next, the goal of communication is action. If they don't act, did you even say it? And this is where the title of this webinar comes. You said everything, but nothing changed. So as you structure your message, remember, the goal of communication is action. And lastly, the goal is for them not to remember you, but to reuse what you gave them. You want them to repeat what you gave them to 2 friends, to their coworkers, to their family, because the true check of knowledge transfer is that they teach somebody else. And I want you to think of your own experience when you come across something that is so wonderful to you or new or exciting. That's your first impulse, is to share it with other people. Remember, simple, repetitive, and structured. Bread, milk, butter. And it truly is that simple. When you use the useful pillar of the EMU Communication Model to structure your message, you no longer ask, does anybody have any questions? Or what is it they want to do next? Instead, you ask, do they know what to do next? You ask, do they understand what they need to do? And also, do they know how to act on this message? And that is when you use the useful filter of the EMU Communication Model. Now, when you use the full EMU Communication Model, you filter your message even further. You ask, is my message engaging? Did it grab their attention? Is my message meaningful? Does it mean something to them? Is my message useful? Can they act on my message? In short, is my message EMU? And if it's not EMU, make it EMU. Because remember, if they can't remember your message, they can't act on it. And if they don't act on it, did you even say it? You would have shared everything, nothing changed. So make your next message EMU. design it so that it's useful and make your next presentation unforgettable.